Hello friends, my name is Jess and welcome back to my channel, Books Past Bedtime. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the 12 books that I read in May. First and foremost though, we're going to be talking about my May monthly reading stats. I'm going to move over a little bit so they're easier to see. In May, like I said, I read 12 books and all of those 12 books totaled up to a total of 2,618 pages. I also listened to almost 8 hours and 45 minutes of audiobooks. This is real time, the time I actually spent listening to audiobooks. So that's pretty good. It's a little higher than it has been in a few months. I'm trying to get back into reading audiobooks, or rather listening to audiobooks. I definitely hope it will help me get more reading. I did reread one book this month and I haven't been tracking books that I've acquired from bookstores or the library, so those two are just zeroed out. As you can see, I kind of had a polarizing month in terms of ratings, and so I almost had the same amount of 1 stars and 5 stars. So my rating for the month averaged out to 2.9. And you can also see there that I had 3 DNFs. The most books are in the polls. So I had 4 5-star books and 3 1-star books, and then a few that were in the middle towards the lower end. In terms of the genres that I read this month, it's kind of silly to show you this whole graphic because there's really only one category, and that is romance. 11 of the books that I read this month were romance books, although I did read 1 nonfiction. This little graph kind of shows you the subgenres of my books. Obviously the nonfiction is not included in this, but I do like to track the subgenres of the romances that I read because I find that it's pretty interesting. And as you can see, there's like a fairly even distribution between fantasy, historical, and contemporary, with definitely a little bit more contemporary than the other two, but these are definitely my most commonly read subgenres within the romance main genre, and so it's interesting that this is really all I read from this month, and I do like seeing those graphs. Next, let's talk about the formatting of the books that I read. So all but one of these books was a novel, and then one was a novella. And in terms of the source of the book, this is definitely more diverse than it usually is. I will say that it's a lot of ebooks. As you can see like how many ebooks I've read for the year. This month it was only 6, but for the year it's like 28, which is over half of the amount of books that I've read, which I guess is the same kind of breakdown as this month, which is interesting. I did have 1 audiobook in there, and then I had another book that I like co-read, so I listened to the audio and I read it physically, so that's counted as mixture, and then 4 physical books. In terms of author and publication, I had an almost even split between authors that I have read before and authors that are new to me. I don't believe I read any debut books this month. And then I had a pretty even split between self-published books and non-self-published books, and the non-self-published books are further split down into traditionally published or indie published. Traditionally published I had 4, and indie published I had 2. The sources that I acquired these books from is pretty varied this month, which I think is interesting. I got 1 book from Audible, 4 books from a bookstore, although I think that means that I owned them. I got 4 from Kindle Unlimited, 1 from the library, and 2 from other sources, which I think are the like novellas from the Green Creek series that were just on the author's website. In terms of audience, all 12 books that I read this month were intended for an adult audience. Whether or not these books were a series was a complete split. So 50% were part of a series and 50% were standalones. We can look at my diversity for the month as well. I think I did a pretty good job. 5 of the books I read were diverse. All 12 were LGBTQIA+ in some way, and 7 were known own voices. Could be higher than that, but this is the amount that I knew that the authors have made public this information. So pretty good. I also always track this because I think it's fun. This is cover color. So I read the most blue and purple books this month, which is fun. It was the cool color month, I guess. And yeah, that's about it as far as stats go. So let's go ahead and talk about the books that I read. I am going to be ranking these from worst to best, so make sure you stick around to the end to hear my favorite books of the month. Right off the bat, let's get my DNFs out of the way. So I DNF'd 3 books this month, which is a lot for me, but I'm proud of myself for just not pushing through these books and wasting time on these books that weren't doing it for me. The first one I'm going to talk about is called Enemy Match by Anna Weinhardt. This is frankly one of the stupidest fucking books I've ever read in my life. Don't get me wrong, I do love a good Omegaverse romance. If you have not been around my channel, you might not know this about me, but you should know this about me if you're going to stick around. I like them. They don't even have to be good per se. They just have to like, you know, itch that spot in your brain that craves Omegaverse, or at least in my brain. And this one just was too stupid to even see past that. The concept is basically that we have these two neighbors. They hate each other, or rather, one doesn't know the other exists and the other hates him. But they get matched up as like very compatible on this dating app, and they go on this date and they're like, oh my god, you live below me, you live above me, but I hate you. But they have this like fated mates attraction to each other, this animalistic attraction to each other, and it involves like nodding right off the gate and literally like walking around while nodded, which I just could not understand the physics of. So that was honestly the main reason why I stopped reading this book, because I just was so baffled by that concept and just could not wrap my head around it and didn't want to wrap my head around it, frankly. So I ended up DNFing this book. The next book I DNF'd was The Step Bet by Riley Hart and Devin McCormick. This is a book about two stepbrothers who absolutely hate each other, and they have this like competitive streak between them where they keep like betting each other to do things and like terrorizing one another. I feel like this was leading up to like some kind of gay chicken-esque situation, and then like a enemies with benefit falling in love eventually situation, but I didn't get that far because the writing was so bad. I should have known because I've tried Riley Hart in the past and really not liked them. So I definitely don't think I will pick up another book by this author. The writing is just awkward and stilted, and the dialogue is cringy, and there's just no chemistry, and it's just hard to chew through. I DNF'd this one as well. And last but certainly not least, the third DNF of the month was Old School Discipline by Misha Horn. I can get behind some spanking in my books. I quite like to read a BDSM romance on Kindle Unlimited, except this one was just BDSM and no romance, which was my issue because well, the whole book starts off with a sex scene that's between, well, it's not really even a sex scene, it's literally just it's like a spanking scene between our main character, the like dean of the school that he goes to, and that's not even who like the main pairing is gonna be, and it was just really weird. It was very aggressive and harsh for me. Like I said, I like BDSM, but I like a romance. I do like discussions. I like consent. I like for everyone to be on the same page, you know, and this was not that. So I ended up DNFing this one as well. But if you're into all boys boarding school romances with spanking and BDSM and kind of like bully romance situations, like, you might like this. It wasn't poorly written, it just was not the kind of thing that I'm into. My least favorite book that I finished was Her Countess to Cherish by Jane Walsh. This is a Regency romance between a female and a bi-gender main character. Now, I really liked the bi-gender representation. I thought it was super interesting and well done, but that's really the only good thing I have to say about this book. The writing was really poor, the dialogue was really cringy, there was no chemistry between the characters, the plot was kind of convoluted, and for a 250-page book, this was really slow and hard to get through. So I definitely did not love this one, and honestly wouldn't recommend. I ended up rating it 2 stars. Next on my list is Going Public by Hudson Lin. This is a boss employee romance. One of our characters is demisexual, which I appreciated that rep. I always appreciate any kind of a-spectrum rep in my romance books. Again though, not much good to say other than that. Honestly, in the first part of the book, like, I was kind of with it. So basically in this book, we have Elvin and Ray. Ray's the boss, Elvin is the employee. Elvin has been in love with Ray for like forever, for as long as they've worked together, but Ray is a playboy and like sleeps around, blah 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 blah. At the beginning of the book though, he has this revelation that, oh, it's been Elvin all along, I'm in love with Elvin. Except like, it doesn't feel realistic. It's so jarring of a revelation, and no like reasoning is explained, no like lead up, no build. It just is like, oh, he just has this thought randomly. So I wasn't really like buying that this playboy guy was all of a sudden ready to settle down when Elvin had literally been there the whole time. I don't know. I wasn't buying it. But other than that, it was okay at first. Like, they were kind of sweet together, blah, blah, blah. But then there are some decisions that are made in like the back half of this book that were just so morally questionable. And honestly, like, Ray, the boss, just really showed his true colors of being a evil capitalist overlord. And so unless that's your thing, I wouldn't recommend this book. I ended up giving it, I think, 2.5 stars, but maybe 2 stars more realistically. Yeah, wouldn't recommend this one. Change of Heart by Claire Lydon is a contemporary sapphic romance that involves fake dating and is set in the Scottish Highlands. Now, this had all the trappings of being like a great, wonderful book, and honestly it was until like 80% in. I was really loving the romance. I thought it was very sweet. I thought it was very well written. I listened to this one on audio and I thought the audiobook was really well done, except there's a twist like 80% into the book, which was a good twist. It was like very shocking and interesting, but the conflict direction that came out of the twist was very strange. Let's just say incest was thrown out there as an idea, a concept that was happening, and I was not here for it. Let's be clear, it wasn't incest. There's no incest happening in this book, but just the fact that it was even considered and mentioned was really off-putting and really made me angry. I'm like, of all the things, of all the conflicts that could come from this, why go there in a cute rom-com romance? Like, I get we were trying to do emotional depth and nuance and conflict, but this was not it. That was not the way to go, which is so sad because the first part of this book was so promising. Like, I genuinely really loved it. So why did we have to go there? I don't know. I ended up giving this one 2.5 stars. Next on my list is Queerly Beloved by Susie Drummond. This is kind of like chick lit with a side of sapphic romance, or women's fiction with a side of sapphic romance, rather. It was more about our main character like finding her way and finding herself and what she wanted to do in her career than it was about the romance, which is fine, except that it was kind of boring. Our main character at the very beginning meets this woman named Charlie who she starts dating, and it's really cute and sweet, but then she gets fired from her job, and instead of telling Charlie about this, she hides it. But it's also not totally her fault because Charlie is very emotionally stunted and very closed off and does not communicate at all. And I kind of found it hard to root for them because I really didn't like Charlie as the book went on. I didn't really think that she was a very good partner or love interest, so I wasn't totally sold on the romance. The other half of the book that's not the romance is involved in our main character Amy like creating this business where she is a hired bridesmaid for people and kind of works behind the scenes to make sure their wedding goes smoothly. And it's all set in 2013 against the backdrop of like queer marriage becoming a hot button issue in the US. By the end, like the Supreme Court case passes and things, like it's set around that. But yeah, it just didn't hit, and I didn't love the romance. It was just like a very middle of the road okay book. Like, it wasn't offensive to read, it just wasn't like very exciting, so I ended up giving it a 2.5 star. Love Song by TJ Klune is book 2.5 in the Green Creek series. It is a novella that takes place between the second and the third book, and it follows Elizabeth. It basically includes everything from Elizabeth's point of view from the first 2 books, as well as her love story with Thomas when they were younger. And her and Thomas are like the matriarch and patriarch of the werewolf pack, essentially. And so this is like a good backstory and insight into Elizabeth and her like motivations and her story, but it was so short that it really didn't do anything for me. I thought that it needed some more to it. I honestly, like, you could skip this, like, it's not that essential. I ended up giving it 3 stars because I just really, you know, don't care about it. All right, the rest of the books on the list are 5 stars, so I love them all. I tried to rank them, but take it with a grain of salt because they're all great. Okay, Ace, What Asexuality Reveals About Desire, Society, and the Meaning of Sex by Angela Chen is the nonfiction book that I read this month. It was really great. Like I said, I gave it 5 stars. This book is a giant compilation of a lot of anecdotal evidence that we have about asexuality in our world and society today, and Angela takes that anecdotal evidence and kind of hypothesizes, theorizes, and applies it to like what we know about the world and how we view the world and what that means for us as a society. It was super interesting and also super validating to hear so many other people's stories, and I really thought Angela handled it well, explained everything well, and honestly this is a great book. It's basically one of the only ones we have about asexuality, at least modernly, popularly. So it's definitely a central rating in my opinion, and it was great. I loved it. On the complete opposite end of the fucking spectrum, we have Dear Daddy Please Spank Me by Chara Croft. I can't believe how many fucking times I've said that phrase from reading this title on my channel. I kind of hate me too. This was my reread of the month also, if that makes it any worse. As if it could get any worse. I fucking love this book. I gave it 5 stars. For the second time. So basically all of those DNFs, I was like wanting something that was like this book, and they just were not delivering. So I was like, why don't I just fucking read the book that I am craving to read? So I did. This is everything I possibly could want in like a BDSM daddy kink romance book. It just is really good. It is one, well written, like the characters are fully developed. It's not cringy to me. It feels like somewhat realistic in terms of kink relationships. There's a lot of communication, there's a lot of care, there's a lot of love, there's a lot of sweetness, and like explaining how this type of relationship fits these characters and works for them and what they need in life. And it's just really beautiful and really great, and it's really fucking hot. And I love it, okay? And my second favorite book of the month was Raven Song by TJ Klune. This is the second book in the Green Creek series, which is TJ Klune's werewolf saga. There are 4 books in this series, all following a different set of main characters and their romance with like a larger overarching plot. So you do have to read them in order. But Raven Song, like I said, is the second book, and it follows Gordo and Mark. Gordo is the witch in the series. He is not a werewolf, but Mark is a werewolf. This is basically their second chance romance. They had a fling as kids, and they're also like fated mates. Gordo fucking goes through it in this book. He goes through it, and he's put through it by all these fucking people in his life that claim to care about him, and it made me so angry. I was rooting for Gordo so much though. I just love him. He is a sweet little cinnamon roll, except he's actually an asshole too. But that makes it even better. I just want to give him a hug and tell him it's gonna be okay. And I just wanted to be happy. So if he's happy in the end, I'm happy. And I really loved this book. It kind of like I said, made me angry, and some of it didn't make sense, but it was really exciting. It was plotted very well, and the romance was really sweet. It was really sweet. It was just great. You should read this series. Don't put it off like I did. And last but not least, my favorite book of the month was A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall. I know everyone has been yelling at me to read this book since it came out. I have also been yelling at myself to read this book since it came out, and I'm so fucking glad I finally did, because it is an amazing book. It is so good. It is literally as good as everyone says that it is. It was so beautiful. If you've been living under a rock, this is a Regency romance with a trans main character. It is friends to lovers. Not really second chance because they were just friends before her transition, but it is just so fucking beautiful and sweet. The things that the characters say to each other are just incredible. Like, I annotated the crap out of this book and highlighted so many things. It's a perfect book. It is perfect. Like, you don't get better than this. It's so good. Viola's transness was just handled with like so much care, but Alexis didn't like shy away from talking about it on page either, which was just incredible. Like, I don't know how to tell you how amazing this book is other than what I've already said. Like, it is just next level. Undeniably one of the most lush, romantic, beautiful romances I have read and will ever read in my entire fucking life. Alright, and that was my May wrap up. I hope you enjoyed this video. If this is your first time here, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Also, if you don't mind liking this video, that would help me out. I would appreciate it. Also, please talk to me in the comments down below. Let me know what the best books you read in May were. If you've read any of these, if you want to read any of these, let me know. I love chatting with you guys down below. In the description, I will link all the books that I talked about. If you purchase through this link, I will earn like a teeny tiny commission. You'll help support this channel at no additional cost to you, although no pressure. It's just there for convenience. If you don't want it, ignore it. Also in the description are my links to my other social media if you want to follow me on any other platforms. And I think that is all I have to say. So thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you watching and spending time with me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.